Hey everyone, thank you for being here. I'm excited to have this invitation by Luis and joining this amazing community. I have heard so many great things, and I just feel honored to be part of this and share a little bit about my story and what has been the latest almost 2 years now. And perhaps the most exciting thing of all is I haven't shared this story so far. I have shared just glimpses here and there, but I hope you will just enjoy it as much as I did while I was creating it. Yeah, I'm Laura Escobar. I'm based in El Salvador, tropical El Salvador, almost always sunny, if not raining. And I'm the founding designer at what is called now Ombigo. I'm a designer, but deep down, I'm a storyteller. I've always been in different ways. And I'm always asking what if. That is probably one of my favorite just quotes or phrases, alongside with it depends. And something that you should know about me, that those who know me already know pretty well, is I'm a type A person. What does that even mean? I'm the type of person that loves planning and to-do list. Whenever there's something that needs to be done, and I think that list has seen this in the past, I'm doing something structured, something that will allow me to just keep track of everything. And just to keep proof of that, I have kept years of Notion database. My trips are planned weeks or months in advance. I think the first one was planned even like a year in advance. And my very first article that I wrote was about organizing Figma files. So nothing surprising here, but the reality of this role is going to be a lot different from what I'm used to or what I was used to in the past. And before I get into the meaty part of this, I'm going to be asking questions. Here and there, I'm going to share some thoughts, and I will love it if you could add your thoughts, your opinion, what's your experience on that, because that will make the conversation exactly that, a conversation. So let's dive in. Building on Beacon has been or has looked like shipping features just based on hunches, on hypotheses, running just experiments and prototypes without KPIs. As of now, I don't think we have a strong KPI that I will recall that we're just holding on to. And uh, it seems like a joke, but truly, my role description changes almost every week because what I'm doing is changing so fast and so often that I try not to hold on to titles anymore. And this is the reality of designing AI native products. There's no PM, no formal PM. Sometimes I'm the PM on some projects. There are no other designers that I could just discuss with and book holes on my ideas. And when your users are actual designers, they will know when I'm faking it and when things are not working as expected. So I have a very high bar to hold on and to meet. So what you're about to see is a story of experiments that became features, quality of session to build trust ultimately, and context to unlock personalization. Context has been a big topic for me this year. And just to be clear, this is not a talk about which tools are the best or which are the processes that I follow to prototype exactly very practical stuff or one-shot prompts that promise you 100% consistency of your design system. This is a different type of talk, and I hope you enjoy it. So let's dive in first with what this experiment approach looks like, or what is this even about? Traditional design has looked something along these lines for a long, long time. This has been shaped by decades of practice. And if you have been here for a few years, you know this is true. It's very structured, very precise, and almost just preemptive. You know what to expect, what comes next after the previous step. But things are changing quite drastically these days. And if you have ever looked for this on Google, have you ever just typed in design thinking? I know I have. And it's a mess. It's a madness. Like when the first time that I Googled for this, I was like, what is going on? And I was searching for the perfect process. I was in the phase in which I believe there was a perfect process, but it's a lot more confusing trying to find it and to figure it out. So if you know, you know. And I'm just asking, first of all, have you been there? And just drop it in the chat and you might find your tribe. Thank you so much. So coming back to the first point, traditional product design has looked like this for a long time, but things are changing very fast. And what designing for early stage startups looks like is something more along like this. There's no strict framework by all means, but you have to experiment to learn. Until then, you should and iterate. But it's just a lot more faster. What used to take a 2 week sprint nowadays is taking probably a day or two, sometimes even hours for some things that are just very, very fast. So why experiments in the first place? Well, first of all, AI is changing the playbooks. And if you rely on traditional development cycles, like I mentioned before, you're going to lose the race against other competitors. And when these solutions haven't been invented yet, one just will create false confidence in what you're doing. Next, models are changing so often. Like it's common news that every single week someone is launching the newest, the greatest, the latest model. And what this means is that assumptions are going to expire very quickly as well. And I remember that in the early stages, granola, which by the way, if you don't know it yet, you should. But granola at the very beginning couldn't handle more than 10 minutes call. And they made a bet, a very bold bet that they were going to focus on quality instead of trying to put in on the roadmap to increase the, the context window to be able to handle longer calls. And it paid off because just months later, the context windows naturally increased with the newest LM, and they didn't have to even put it on the front. It was already solved for them. So you have to almost become kind of like a predictor of the future when you are developing in this environment. And finally, when your users can't articulate what they want from AI, because it's also new, it's new for everyone, you discover through showing. And that's when throwaway prototypes are your best friends, just to achieve the just enough quality and validate your ideas very early and very often. So what this type of reality became is some emergent principles that naturally evolve and shape over time for me. So the first one, explaining too long, just prototype it. And speaking of showing, let the process speak for itself. I'm in the process of developing a new feature. Whenever I'm discussing of what this could look like, is this going to be valuable? If I realize that for me to explain it will take too long, will take a long video, will just require for me to type in a lot, that's it. I know it's going to become a problem because it will help me to just demonstrate my idea. And you can do this with there's so many tools out there nowadays. It's so easy to just get started, try something, and build on top of it. And I'm not talking about the type of products that are going to become the entire business. I'm just literally talking about throwaway prototypes that you can use for one time, and that's it. And that it will communicate what you really wanted to communicate. Next, if ideas are big, they deserve real experiments to test the model boundaries, not just user preference. Like in this example, Priya, very famous in the community, was going back and forth between Figma Make and the Figma editor to shape this concept. And he was trying to just demonstrate whether or not it will make sense, playing with the model, playing with the tool, and going back and forth. What happened when he shared this with the developer? Surprise. Like people really got it. And it created so immense value because at first they realized, okay, yeah, it can be done. But the big surprise is when it's actual code. And it doesn't have to be perfect, cleaner code. all you need is the baseline for it to serve the purpose and get started with it. So I have used this trick to build the starting point for the web app. Like in this case, there was something about the behavior that wasn't working. I wanted it to work in a percentage of the image, and the engineering team couldn't nail it at first. I came in, I tried a few things, it worked, and now it's helping out to for the production code or creating an animation of one of the upcoming features or one of the changes that are going to happen. Like in this case, I came into Figma editor, created the baseline design, took these over to Figma Make, similar to what we did, and went back and forth until I felt really good about it. Sometimes just changing the CSS because I need to do a minimal adjustment and I know just basic CSS to do it. And sometimes just animating loading spinners. I believe me, it's actually fun to do some of this because you're trying to find the perfect animation online and maybe there isn't. So apart from that, I have also built or worked on prompts that ended up being the foundation for system prompts. And that's a way that I have been able to contribute to code already, not directly to by doing PRs, although that might be cool in the future. I have done that a few times, but it's a way of collaborating that is beyond the traditional boundaries that we have. And this is another example that I wanted to share in which experiments need to show value. And this value doesn't need to be grandiose, but just try to think how these ideas can be replicated. Not just metrics, it's about learning and reverse engineering. Like Gavin from the linear team, who is prototyping with Swift UI on iOS, just testing out what can be done with the menu or envisioning split screen interactions, or how does the liquid glass bulwark can be tweaked in the script. So remember, you don't need permission to experiment. What you need is curiosity. And with this in mind, with this type of principles that emerge naturally in mind, I wanted to show you how the plugin that you can use and enjoy nowadays came to be. Because it has been a long road. It hasn't been easy, but there has been so many learnings along the road. So let's just look first at the initial stage, which is meeting users where they are. I knew that coming in, since I was a designer and it was going to be built by designers, I wanted to really hold on to the existing experiences as a designer. I've been in so many design feedback sessions, so many design critiques. And for those of you who are not familiar with what we're doing at Beacon, the plugin, which is called AI Design Reviewer, you can look for it on Figma Community, is exactly that. You can just review your design with a few clicks on different aspects. And knowing that I was going to design for other designers, I wanted to have that mentality coming in and holding the bar very high to know whether or not we were on the right track. And one of the first things that I kept in mind was that designs are starting on Figma. So if their workflow already exists, we don't need to take them out anywhere else. It's already frustrating when you have to try and do something in another app or try and download something else. What if you can just open the plugin and start doing everything as much as you can inside the canvas or inside the environment of Figma? Starting off with this, I have a question, another question. How do you add feedback to other designers when you're on Figma? Or how do you annotate the feedback you get when you are on a call? You're on a call with another stakeholder, and they are giving you feedback. They are mentioning something that needs to be a priority, an interaction that needs to change, something that needs to be added, removed. So many things happening. How do you deal with that in Figma? And let me be honest, what I do is just drop in the text right next to the design. That's the type of just behavior that I naturally developed over the years. And I remember that it was something almost every designer out there already does. You could bring in a UI kit or something and try to put it neatly in find a way of making it easy to parse, to look through and remember either that or comments inside it. So I leveraged exactly that, existing mental models, and asked myself, what if we replicated these existing behaviors? That's how the very first feature that I proposed came to me, which is the post-it style feedback inside the canvas, just show on canvas. And I'm proud to say that to this day, it's actually one of the most loved features in the plugin because it's nothing like what others are doing or what we're doing in the past. What I just did is try to replicate and remember I'm a designer. How do I feel most naturally dealing with feedback right next to my design? Or the way that you will when you were on a whiteboard physically and you will add post-its next to it. So that was the idea. That's the very first one. Next, what if we match the ecosystem? People were telling us early on that they had a hard time understanding what the feedback was referring to. So there I thought, we didn't have a direct competitor or a similar tool that we could just steal a pattern from, which is more common in other scenarios that are especially non-AI, where you could just land a pattern and use it in your app. But in this case, I didn't have one. So I tried to think, okay, how do people actually find the things that they are seeing elsewhere inside Figma? That's how I took it up from there directly. Similar to how I will do with iOS or Android, I replicate or embed within the system. And we added the inspect to submit. So you are looking at the feedback, you click on inspect, and it will take you exactly where that feedback is referring to. So it's still also one of the most loved features, even if it's a small one. And then what if we help the users have conversations? People were already loving the feedback, it was helpful, but they wanted to share, designers wanted to share this feedback with the stakeholders. So that's how we came back to basics, which is the email, the humble email. And to this day, we have 7 different types of email that you can get depending on the nature, the content of the feedback review that you generate. And what you can do is simply share this with others and get a glimpse of what the review is about. And of course, if you want to dive deeper, you can open the plugin, you can add it to the canvas and have a longer conversation with others. But the very first step in here is just enabling conversations. So what do we have here as a main learning? Start making something just absolutely easy. Be the ideas person and have a lot of ideas, but early on, use your superpower intentionally to build this foundation first. And in our case, it has been just about giving the feedback exactly where people are. We didn't need to build everything all at once, even though I already had a lot of ideas in my head that will take months or years to come to life. And next stage is quality feedback equals trust. And there was this problem that anyone who used, by the time that we started earlier last year, anyone can use even now an LLM and generate design feedback. But how can we make designers actually apply the feedback that we're generating? If anyone, and this was challenging for me early on, if anyone can use ChatGPT to generate feedback, just drop in the image, ask it the question, why would you use a tool? So the answer here, and similar to what others have been doing in the space of AI, is to actually go deep and go narrow. Because that's something that very general tools like ChatGPT and others are not going to do because it's a different purpose. They are trying to provide a different type of value. So we came in even narrow. And time for another question. During design critiques or reviews, how often do you get the actual useful feedback? how easy is it to understand and act on it? Because what you're seeing here is what commonly happens in reality, what we call this sandwich design feedback. And you start just by saying, hey, I love the design. The color palette is fantastic. You nailed down this and that. But maybe perhaps you could do this tiny small change. I don't know, what do you think? But truly, it's really good. I've been guilty of this sometimes. I learned to unlearn and become better at it. But it's true that this is the reality a lot of us are facing and what we are seeing in conversations. And when you are trying to get actionable, valuable feedback, this is not the way to go. So what if we made feedback truly actionable? And it sounds simpler than it actually is, believe me. That's how we decided to structure the feedback card. It's the most used component we have in the plugin and the system as a whole. And it has gone through lot of iteration. First of all, starting with making this feedback the very first thing that you see, truly actionable, concise, and specific. We have played a lot with tone, length, given examples at the very top, and many more ideas throughout the time that we have been doing this. And at the end of the day, we came back to this very specific, actionable, and concise feedback that you can just immediately understand and say, okay, yeah, I know how to act on it. And we reached this sweet spot through a lot of iteration, as I mentioned. And this became the criteria that I use then to evaluate outputs. And you will see this in a moment. But truly, it's not something that you get at the first time. It's something that happens over time. Next, we wanted to provide something to help the decision making. And in this case, it could look like just understanding the psychology behind this feedback, or maybe seeing other alternatives for your color or for your copy, which seem very small, but it makes it all the easier to act on it when you have something more concrete to grab on and apply to your design. And finally, good feedback wouldn't be good feedback if there wasn't a clear understanding of why you need to act on it. Why does this even matter in the first place? So we wanted to provide this clear rationale because you needed a solid reason on why this needed to change. Or on the other hand, adding a source, adding something else to allow you to explore more if needed and learn and decide. And next, what if we made this quality? Last point on quality. What if we made this a core value? Believe it or not, this is the main value that I keep repeating to the engineering team. Everyone on the team knows that I'm not going to put the UI first before the quality. The UI is only going to be the vehicle to provide really good quality because at the end of the day, quality is going to make or break the first impression. And you don't get a second first impression. It only happens once. That's what happens when someone just tests a tool and they said, oh no, this is slow, or this has a lot of hallucinations, or this is not what I expect. This is the reality. And that's why I keep on, when I'm reviewing, I'm very critical about the quality. And if there's a lot of things on my plate, but there's one thing related to quality that I need to help with in some way or form, that's going to be at the top of my list. Because I know that it will, no matter what happens in the landscape of LLMs, it's going to be the one thing that stays true. That is going to be the one that will create the most value for any user out there. So that's why I have run thousands of manual evaluations. What you're seeing here is the screenshot of just one round. So whenever there's new feature that is going to be built or an improvement on a theme, a category, or something that we are going to try and put out there, I'm going to be doing this. The engineering team is going to generate a lot of outputs for me to review. They give me a little bit of context on what they did, what changed, what they are trying to achieve. And I come in And it's almost like being the mean designer, going through it and trying to poke holes on everything. Just trying to understand, is this something that I will actually use? If not, then why? Because this context shapes the iterations, the fine tuning that happens, and the magic of AI. So I'm giving, it's not just a yes or no. I'm constantly giving a feedback as if I were doing this for another designer and say, you know what? I won't use this because it's not taking consideration the density of the data in the dashboard. I won't use this because it's a different color compared to the actual color palette. Or this is not taking consideration the accessibility of the icon. So many things. I have lost count of the amount of manual emails that I have done. Just necessary. So what if, once again, we made feedback more impactful? This was a trick one. Because when I was just proposed with the idea of making something more strategic, like feedback that was more strategic, I couldn't exactly pinpoint out what does that even mean. So I started to experiment and I do a couple of things, try to understand what does that even mean. So we came from surfacing fixes to turning these into insights that provide a different angle. So what we landed on was divergent thinking, rethinking the purpose of your feature or the screen entirely, or even shifting the entire flow at some point, because you can review entire flows. And we could think about different ways of handling this. So it's less about granular fixes and more about high impact suggestions, which also includes these suggestions one by one. And who is this going to affect this? What are the metrics that could be moved by these? So many other things that are higher level than just change the color of this or change the copy of that. So the lesson on quality is that you should ship the quality you will be proud of. Instead of fully automating, we have been using non-scalable ways to understand what this great looks like in this environment and just start fine-tuning, measuring, increasing 10%, 5%, just a small increase of quality that we know are going to be appreciated by other designers out there. And saying at all times when I'm evaluating, can I trust this? Will I actually use this feedback or not? I'm very critical. And finally, the last stage that we have been on, and probably the main theme that we have had this year, is understanding what type of context can move the needle. And once again, this might seem easier than it seems because it might seem as if just adding dumping context is all that matters, just adding it for the sake of it. But generic AI advice is nice. What we need to create is contextual advice that is going to help you in your unique context, in your unique problem to move the needle. And this will become the competitive advantage that we are looking for. It's just quality over quantity all the time. So let's start with something simple. And I'll ask another question. How many UX laws can you remember by heart? If you're familiar with UX laws, I'm curious. How many UX laws can you remember? At this point where I am, I probably could recite 3 or 4, perhaps, if I'm lucky. If I look at it, if I look at the name, I'll probably remember it. I'll say, I think it's this one. It's Higgs law. It's Miller's law. But truly, there's no time in life to actually just memorize as if you were in school back in the day, trying to memorize everything that you were taught. This is no way of spending your time. So what if you didn't have to memorize behavioral principles up more than 100, let alone just design principles in general? So that's how we came to build the foundation first of universal heuristics as the baseline. We just started with design principles for UI, the type of things that you know and will recognize when you look at a UI, and UX laws, which I initially thought were only like 20 out there. Turns out there when I was doing the research that there's a lot more because this is not just space for, although it's called UX laws, It's all based on behavioral science. It's all founded on top of psychological principles and biases that people have studied for decades and even hundreds of years, developing and understanding these notions that happen to almost every single human being out there. So we built this repository literally by hand and going one by one, evaluating and truly understanding or trying to reverse engineer almost what good design or great design even looks like to give you feedback based on actual best practices. So next, what if you didn't have to memorize, coming back to the point of not memorizing, what if you didn't have to memorize mobile specific rules? I remember years ago designing for iOS or Android and having to spend literally hours just reading and trying to find these specific sizes, the rules, and usage that you have to have when you are building for that. And sadly, for accessibility, a lot of the tools out there are based on web guidelines, the web content accessibility guidelines that we all know and love. But when it comes to iOS and Android, things change just slightly, so even. So that's how I pushed for and campaigned for, and we got it. Platform-specific guidelines for accessibility. You can just pick what type of design you are going to review, whether that's for web, iOS, or Android, and you will get not only the specific feedback, but a very nice and beautiful report that you can easily parse through to understand what are the issues related to your mobile design. And this is just the first step. I know that there's a lot more that can be done to help others understand and give feedback around mobile design. There's going to be very specific for each case, but it's just the very first step. And we're going to come a long way in the months and years to come. And finally, what if you didn't have to memorize branding rules? I know I'm not the only one that has been handed at the very beginning of a project. If you have been on agency, I have in the past. And the only thing you get when you ask, hey, is there a UI kit that I can leverage? And you get handed out a PDF. And it's not about the rules of the UI or how the typography is going to be using different scales or the spacing sizes and all of that. What you get really is the brand book that was built to understand or create the foundation of the brand. So we are not in the space of UI talking specifically. It's not common for us to memorize these rules. What we do is adapt this brand and turn it into something that we use that's more usable in the context of UI. So what if you didn't have to memorize these rules? That's why we built the brand and product context in two different ways. One is that you can upload your custom guidelines for things like copy, tone of voice, the grammar, or on the other hand, if it's more visual, then color palette or font family. Just upload the document. We'll do the hard work for you to handle all the context, figure it out, and just establish these rules that can be reusable. Or on the other hand, allow you to share more context with us about who is your audience, what type of problem are you trying to solve, what is the business goal. Because in experiments, I have noticed myself that it does a great deal of improvement when you have this context to reuse. And it's going to point the feedback to very specific situations and very specific audience that is much more different than just throwing a blanket advice and saying you should improve the UI and make it more clean. That's not the way to go. And coming soon, and this is just a spoiler of what's coming next, we're going to be handling design linter. And that's something that I have been just so excited for a long time. And the team knows that I'm very excited about this. So hopefully we can make a design linter that is going to be incredibly useful for you, that will just help you solve all these little issues that you have to spend hours trying to solve. And for context, the learning is that you have to build it intentionally. the more valuable the context that you give, the more it moves from just a helpful intern to an invaluable partner. And looking through all these three stages that I have shared, it all seems obvious. If you look at the product right now, you will say, well, yeah, it was obvious. You had to build all of this. But truly, every single feature that I have just described has been an experiment. Sometimes it works at the very first time, like UX critic. There's this use case that we built and thinking hopefully people will find it useful to have a better understanding of UX, we're leveraging the UX flaws and all of that. Well, it turns out it was really helpful. And nowadays, one of the most used types of reviews that we have. But sometimes we have had to backtrack. We have had to change the naming, the position, rethink the interaction, so many little details. And all of this is based on user feedback. We keep an ongoing conversation with the users. Whenever there's someone that gives us feedback, we're going to be reaching out and saying, hey, we noticed you mentioned this issue. Can you share with us a little bit more about what does this mean? Or whenever we are going to develop a new feature, and it's going to be a very big one, then we're having conversations and trying to understand, even before the UI takes shape, just talking. Hey, is this something that will be useful? Which is something that happened with me when we were improving accessibility. And because it's not my specialty, I try to understand, okay, what are these people really caring about in the space of accessibility? It's a lot more meaty, and you have to spend a lot more time with your users to develop this muscle. And now that we have seen what the principles that emerge for experimentation, what type of features I have developed alongside with the team, how has this change been as a founding designer? Well, let's just start by stating the almost obvious. I didn't know what I did. I thought that founding designer, what this meant was really going to be about building a design system early on or creating a compelling and very alluring design strategy, planning to scale design operations and become a really daring leader in a year or two, and a lot more processes and frameworks. But really, there wasn't a lot of discussion about the role out there. I have mentioned this to Liz in the past that I noticed this. There isn't a lot of discussion about the reality. So I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what to expect coming in. And the truth is that signing for pre-product market fit feels a lot like playing on survival mode. Because this is what you're going to be requiring when you are on a 10% team in the old designer, by the way. Fully remote. Absolutely, there are no offices out there. I can go to the office and share the feedback directly with the engineer next to me. We are async first for the most part, have just the necessary calls throughout the week. And it's an AI native startup. So just that in itself, it's going to be quite exciting to deal with. But there are a couple of things that I want to share on this, how this mindset change over time. I went from systematizing first to systematizing only when it's needed. Previously, I thought that I had to create comprehensive frameworks almost immediately, just handle that structure for the team to build on top. And it could create frustration. It has created frustration in some other situations in the past. But the reality is that you need to just build a minimal foundation structure. And once you know what are the points that you make this reusable and allow others to leverage that. But just to give a quick example, I haven't even really built a design system yet. I'm almost 2 years in. And for those of you who know me that I love design systems, it could come as a shock that I haven't built a design system yet. Some of the components that I have in there is probably spent a few months without being actual components. And I know that there are founding designers out there that are even more chaotic in the way that they build their products, and not judgment to them really, because I know how chaotic it can be. Next, I went from specialized designer and really trying to figure out to find my way as a either leader, and design ops specialist, or design system specialist to becoming a product builder. It's not even necessary these days to call yourself a designer because you can just be a product builder. The way that it used to be, or the way that I used to think, is that I need to stay on my lane, let others handle everything else. But the reality these days for me is that I have expanded my role to things like data analysis, pricing strategy, prompt engineering, go to market. And these weren't things that were actually on my role description at the very beginning. One week I'm just running eyeballs or to establish the quality, similar to what I just showed a few minutes ago. The next I'm using AI to analyze pricing or experimenting with new prompts to reverse engineering a certain type of feedback. It's all changing and very dynamic, and you have to embrace it. I went from perfect, then ship to learn. Seems small, but it's a very drastic mindset shift because we could spend hours and hours or days in planning and thinking about the roadmap for, I don't know, what, 2 years and hoping that it's going to hold. But in this reality of early stage, especially with AI, you just need to ship good enough versions to learn what matters. And an example of that is that the very first versions of our premium audits had gaps in them. And there was missing context, there were assumptions, there was information that wasn't even needed. But customers loved them anyway. And their feedback that we got to see during conversations shaped many more my iterations. And nowadays, I know for a fact that it brings an immense value whenever we do one of them. And as I'm going through the feedback that is generated, I'm just nodding along and saying, yes, this is exactly what they need. And that's the best feeling, really, when you are reviewing this and giving this to someone else to reverse. I went from avoiding failure, because it's daunting, to intuition built on iteration. The most repetitive or natural advice that we get is that we need to reduce risk, commonly through planning and battle-tested frameworks. But as I said before, the old labels are just a thing of the past in many ways in this nature, in this type of environment. You need to take calculated bets just through running experiments and ongoing user feedback, just talking with your users. And not all experiments, once again, not all experiments need a success metric. Sometimes it just needs to teach us something about what creates value. So the sum of all of this is you need to first explore and then systematize. Don't worry too much about building systems early. Your strength as a system thinker is that you will know when these systems are needed to be built in the first place. You don't need to abandon these structures or systems. I know I love them still. You need to earn them, explore and discover patterns, and then only then systematize what you have learned. So let's do a quick recap of what this experimentation driven design looks like. First, you need to prototype faster than you're explaining. Leverage the tools. Take whatever new tool you have seen out there and put a time box on it. Just spend an hour or two and try to find your way around and show, don't tell. Because explanations are open to interpretations. And I know I'm not the only one in saying that I have explained or thought that I had explained perfectly something to an engineer, only to look at the implementation and saying, that's not what I meant. So try to reduce these headaches and build something that is tangible, that is visual, that is easier to explain than making hand gestures or making sounds even to explain an animation. And next, experiment with model boundaries. You need to, instead of just reading about it and collecting bookmarks about it, understand what AI can or cannot do by testing it, by using it. And the best designers out there that are leveraging AI aren't the ones with one-shot prompts. They are the ones testing AI themselves and learning which tools or models serve them better for certain tasks in their workflow. Not everything. Not everything at once, not paying for every tool out there. You just need to have a bias to action and learn by doing. And finally, embrace these dynamic roles. Work hard to develop this intuition and the influence that you need to have across the team. And although I started as a systematic designer who loved all these frameworks and systems and just having a predictable foundation for me to work with, nowadays I'm a founding designer who is prototyping on hunches and shipping to learn. Both of these skills matter, but you have to know when to use each of these. We have to embrace the discomfort of not knowing because let me tell you, a lot of times you won't know and experiment your way to have clarity. And I will leave you with this. Every experiment is going to change you, similar to the ship of Theseus. After enough of these experiments, you're going to be operating at a different level. I know I have. If I look back 2 years and look at myself, and I'll go and say, man, I had a lot to learn. I had a lot to do. And that's the best feeling. I really enjoy looking back and saying, yes, it has been time well spent. And it's still you, but it's a better version of you. Else it's just going to be uncomfortable if you're thinking about this, if you are in there, it's uncomfortable, it's messy. It requires shipping things before you fully understand it. But it can also be one of the most formative and rewarding experiences of your career. It's fun and challenging all at once. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lara. Now you see, guys, you see why I keep on knocking at her door virtually. Obviously, we're far. But it's like, wow, this is incredible. We have really great questions. I would love to see even more questions. And one of the benefits of being the host is like I can start with my own, right? Where do you find the how to say that the stamina to keep experimenting, right? I think at the very beginning it's always fun. You're getting something new, something incredible, and then that has become your life. It's your routine. It's part of your process. And the AI most of the time delivers something, but there is like always a 5% that is getting you the rail sometimes. Where do you keep your energy to keep on going?
Yeah, I think that's a reality, and it's something that I think every now and then. And I think of two things at the forefront of my mind. One is that I come in with a real expectations, and I'm not going to expect things to work at the very first time. I'm always putting on the skeptic hat on. Believe me, I'm going to be the first one that says, I don't know. I was like that at the very beginning of AI, and I still am in a way. And just coming in and saying, okay, let's hope for the best. I'll give it a chance and see what happens. If it didn't hold on because of something, because of the quality or whatever, I might give it a try later on. But just coming in with real expectations and knowing that things aren't going to be perfect until proven otherwise, and I see someone else do it, then I'm going to hold my thoughts, try it, and see what happens. But the second idea that comes to mind is I really like following people that inspire me to be playful, to experiment, and to just try things and see what happens. So sometimes, like the example that I gave with Reed, it's just this going back and forth. It wasn't about new tools; I already knew them. But there was something about the way that he shared this back and forth process that made me go, huh, maybe I can do the same. Maybe I can just try and do this design initially here, move it to make, do a very simple prompt of, hey, I want to first duplicate the static thing, then add an animation, something like this. But it's just the fact that I'm following people that are just as excited about exploring that in turn is making me excited about exploring. So just try and find your tribe, try and find people that will keep you on your toes of, oh my God, can I do this? And keep you humble, keep you playful. So that will be my way to go.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, we have a question from Bai Pai. I don't know. Sorry, Bai. It seems like he or she will not be able to be online to share it, but I'm going to repeat the question. What other AI prototyping tools would you recommend besides Figma or anything else? Any suggestions?
Yeah, so far I have played with V0, so from Make, and also with Lovable. And it truly depends on what you're trying to achieve. That's why I love this phrase. It depends. And I have seen great results depending on what I was going to do. I really love that in the case of Lovable, the quality of the UI is top notch. They have done something about the system prompts. I don't know exactly what it is, but the output feels really, really great. That it looks nice. So you can do something and share it with the user, and they are not going to be fixated on something that was misplaced or something like that. And for the case of P0, it has helped me just to play around with things like building a little bit of the backend with the database or making a connection with just playing, learning a little bit about the APIs or something like that. The example that I gave about building the initial screen to make it responsive the way that I wanted was built with P0. And what I really like about that one in particular is that it allows me to change the CSS without having to invest the tokens of that without having to pay for it. It's just a way, it feels like a playground for me to build a baseline. And if I have something that I want to change specifically, I can just come in and make a tiny change in the code. And for instance, I'm familiar with Tailwind and I know a little bit about the classes and all of that. Or if I can remember something exactly, I have the documentation at hand, and I would just go in and see, okay, how was this class called? I'll look at it and make the change. So these little things, it feels really great to just keep exploring. I remember that one of the first prototypes I built in B0 had probably like over 50 iterations. It was crazy. I was breaking the context window with that one. So it's just that I kept going. That feels great. It's just like a dopamine hit that you get when things are moving slowly but sure. So those will be the other two that I will recommend that I have personally used, but I'll like to try out Cursor sometime on or just Claude Code directly to use it in the future.
That's incredible. I'm going to share the notes with Mindagas. I think he's going to be
Oh
happy to
yeah,
hear about
absolutely.
Lovable. Okay, the second question is a bit of it's a bit hard, right? Because it's about predicting the future. But what do you think will be the impact of AI on designers and how we should be prepared?
Yeah, that's a tough one, and we shall all really be making this question honestly. I believe that, and I try to be optimistic. And there was, I can't remember exactly who it was that said that to be a designer is to be optimistic. So I try to be that. And it's definitely going to change the way we practice design. It has already been changing. I call myself nowadays a product builder because traditional design is no longer holding on. So it's changing the way in which we build products. I think that's the overarching thing that is happening. The way we ideate, the way that we refine, like with this tool, or the way we ship. Like we can directly contribute to code without being an engineer. Like I will never call myself an engineer. It's a tough career and big respect for those that do it, but I'm not going to be an engineer. And so we have to adapt the way in which we build these products and learn what type of tool, model, or approach work best for our own context. Like if I try to replicate exactly what someone else is doing, it's probably not going to work exactly the way I'd expected. You just need to pick here and there and find ways in which to shape your own process. Because traditional design thinking, the way that the structure of it used to work, is no longer the playbook that we need to use. So just that being open-minded about changing your workflows and your toolkits and even your title, your role, is the best way to go.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot. We have a question from Randall. So please, would you like to take the microphone and ask the question?
Hey, Laura, you hear me okay? It's working?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing your expertise. This has been great. My background's in behavioral psych and human tool culture theory, so I am no fun at parties, but I really enjoy this kind of stuff. And my co-founder, who is a product designer, we are just a mess. So this is great. On that note, one of the things that really stood out was that idea of not waiting for it to be ready and shipping and just getting it out there to get more signals back. It's something that we practice every week in our work, and something we're always navigating is the difference between, is it shippable enough to get the signals or to get the information? Are we compromising it? Is it good enough, or where that quality is? So I'm curious for you, how do you determine when something is shippable enough versus maybe not quite yet, without kind of losing your momentum?
No, yeah, that's a great question. It's something that I need to revise every time that we're going to ship it. Because, for instance, in the case of the design later, there's a lot of ideas that I have. Like I probably have thought already about V5 at least of what this is going to be. Like I get like a madman just looking at the what could be. And I know it's probably going to take months to get there. But I try to remember myself, how can we put our best foot forward, just showing that we have quality, because quality is going to be the most important thing of all times. But at the same time, ship the one thing that will get you feedback. Just enough for people to poke holes on it, to go and say, hey, look, this is not what we needed. Or on the other hand, hey, can we do this other thing? Because whenever there's a user that is asking for more outside of what you have already built, they're into something. And it's that signal that makes you go and say, hey, this is working. So it's just enough while keeping the quality at the forefront of it. So I hope it helps. That's the
Yeah,
way that I
that's
approach it.
wonderful. Thank you. And when you're interested in trying new tools, please reach out. I'm happy to share what we're working on.
Fantastic.
That's excellent. Well, I think pretty soon that should be the dynamic, right? Like people building things, talking to people that build things, and then that's how things are. Um, well, okay, I have a question, and then we're going through Ian's question. Seems like from what you have described, you have a very small team that is somehow collaborating in a way that many others will try to avoid, right? If I try to have an analogy, we have maybe the usual corporate structure is more like a marching band or like a big orchestra, right? Everybody has their orders and nobody gets out of tone, right? But your company is more like a jazz band that they are jamming together. How do you find the how to say that? How do you vibe together, being so far, being so culturally, potentially culturally distant, right? How do you get your drive? How you discover that?
Fantastic. No, yeah, thank you for that one. And I love that you put in this metaphor of the music, because I also happen to be a musician. For those of you who are familiar with music, you will see the amplifier in here. So I love that analogy and just in general, because that's the true thing that is happening. Nobody has a set on strict role. in a team, especially not me, because I'm changing all the time. I'm getting involved in so many other things. And the one thing, well, let's start just by saying almost obvious. You need to respect the talent that other people have and the value that they bring to the table. If you're not able to respect and appreciate the value they bring, it's going to be hard to have this dynamic and it just almost like a hot potato process that Dan Moll shared about almost like 10 years ago, I think, where he was just passing off the hot potato and going back and forth about the ideas, about the process, about how to shape this product. And the second part is to feel and encourage others to not feel like you need permission to do stuff. And I'm talking about this in not only in getting involved in other type of activities, like we don't have a data analyst. I do that sometimes when I have the chance, when I'm very intrigued about something that happened. I'm not asking permission for that. The only thing that I'm perhaps going to be asking is, can you make a data dump of this and that? If I don't have the data available, can I do that? Or in the case of bringing ideas, have an open mind, knowing that, and quoting Ratatouille, great ideas can come from anywhere, really. So sometimes an engineer will come on and ask me, hey, Laura, have you thought about this? And it truly makes me pause and go, you're totally right. I think we need to rethink how we are going to shape this and accept, be humble enough to know that we're all in this together. We're really all building this thing that we hope that people will love. And so having the humility to take these ideas and respect the work that others are doing is going to be key to build this really respectful and dynamic relationship with one another and enjoy working at the same time. Because let me tell you, it's a lot more fun when you enjoy it than not.
Wow. Can you adopt me? I mean, seems like, are you hiring? Sounds awesome.
We go over to El Salvador and we have purposes to share.
Okay, guys, thank you very much. No. Okay, that's in the books. That's in the book. Not right away, not right away, but that's in the books. And thank you for calling Ratatouille. That's now it's time to watch it again. Liam, I saw a comment from your side. I don't know if formulated. There is a way to formulate it as a question. I'm going to just mention it. You have to either fill out or negotiate the tempo with clients. I don't know if that's inspiring any answers from you, Laura.
I think I understood the dynamic, especially relating to clients, and hope this makes sense and it's responding to the question. When you're dealing with clients and not only clients, stakeholders, there has to be a dynamic of negotiation. And that's also why I mentioned in the conversation about influence. Because what you're trying to do is not to have the best idea or always be right in what is going to get done. What you need is to negotiate. And once again, be open-minded and think about different perspectives. Have this kind of like a dance and see what happens until you land on what the ultimate goal is to make a really great product. It's not to be right, it's to build a great product. So I hope this one helps.
Great advice. I don't see any more questions coming down the line. I guess also we are passing the hour. So my last question will be, well, Laura, now that we saw that you had your QR code on how to reach out, the next question is, what is the best way to reach out to you?
For sure. You can find me on Twitter. So Laura Esc, LAURIEESC. And I'm like that almost anywhere else. But you can also find me at itdepends.fya. That's the place in which I'm writing every month. I'm sharing stories, I'm sharing about my learnings. And just this week, I published an article on being a founding designer. It's like a companion to this talk. And I wrote this in collaboration with someone who Some people might know Tom Johnson, who was previously at Baystash and just recently joined Vercel. He's an amazing guy, also a founding designer previously. So we just share notes. I think you will enjoy it. So you can find me in those two places or on LinkedIn. But if you scan the QR, you might know everywhere else where I am. So yeah, just keep the conversation going.
I put the It Depends Substack there. Guys, you have a lot of homework. I totally recommend it. I'm subscribed, and it's always it's always a happy note when I get the email saying, "Hey, there is something else from Laura." So check it out. I think it's very important not only to see the designer, but see the development of a designer, right? So if you have a designer that actually also writes and writes frequently, that also gives you a thread, right? Tells you where that person is going and what that person is thinking. Therefore, this advice has more context, right? It goes back to the idea of context. And any last thoughts, any last suggestions, Laura, before we jump out to other things?
Perhaps the only thing that I will recommend and the closing notes that I gave is if you are on the verge of becoming a founding designer, if you have thought about it, or if you have thought about founding a team, even a company, uh, you have to be aware that it's not going to be easy. But at the same time, it's going to be rewarding, extremely rewarding. Is it these types of experiences that you don't understand until you live them? It's a lot different than just reading than actually doing. So if you have the chance and you're brave enough to do it, just like I did, then go for it. Believe me, it's going to make a pivotal moment on your career. So go for it. And if you have questions, just follow me along, drop a note. I will be happy to just share notes and have a conversation about it.